All right, we're calling the meeting to order. It's 5:30. We'll do a quick roll call, starting with Frank, if you wouldn't just mind just saying your name into the microphone so our minute taker can hear who's here and then hear our voices.
Frank Wagner.
Carl Brown.
Jordan Seligren.
Kevin Larson.
Kevin Boyd.
Cecile Kernsley.
Noah Stork.
Sharon DeGraw.
All right. Item A and B covered. Item C is public discussion, anything not in the agenda. I don't think we have anyone here for that, so we'll move on to item D, the certificate of appropriateness. This is for 502 Clark Street.
Okay. 502 Clark Street is in the Clark Street Conservation District, located here. This is the front of the house. As I mentioned in the packet, the original house that was built in the front of the lot was relocated. So here's that front house. Here's the house that was relocated to the back of the lot. Here is another image of it, just so you're aware. And then in about 1948, the house at the front was built. So the original house was just basically this front rectangle here, and it had a garage as well. Looking back at the insurance maps, I was able to see that at one point then there was a breezeway that connected it. And then they added on so that there's a little bit of an addition here, a little bit wraps around the side with this little gable roof, and then this little portion that's kind of off to the side. The property line is pretty close along here. So what the project does is it takes some of these interior walls on that addition and removes them. The original iteration also removed some of this wall out here, but not only does that wall not follow our guidelines, you know, it was built long before we had a district and everything, but it's too close to the property line. So that's one of those situations where it's all grandfathered in, but as soon as they would remove that wall, they actually have to meet the setback requirements, and then they'd probably have to meet our guidelines as well. So the project changed to not remove that wall at that time. So we're removing these interior walls. There's also a deck in this area that is being removed. Here you can see kind of what the outline is and the deck, and they will be filling in all of this area and then adding a deck to this area here. So we'll look at this in a little bit more detail. Yeah, I'll move on to the next image. So here we are looking at the back of the house. So we can kind of see the house has this shed roof dormer on it on the second floor, and then this projecting gable on the second floor. And then these are some of those one-story additions, and somewhere in this area is the garage. So what they're going to be doing is removing this window, and I believe it's because the roofs on the new addition will block that area. And they will be removing all of this roof here, as you can see here, and some of this portion in here, which is probably what's going on there. And so they'll be filling in where that window goes. And since they're filling this whole area with an addition, they're going to just put a gable roof over that. This little bump out, I think, is because there will be a step down into the garage, but they don't want to start that step down until you get to the garage. So they're adding a bit of a gable roof kind of projection on top of the garage for that area where you kind of step down to get enough headroom in there. There will also be a deck, as you can see, with a railing. The interesting thing here is this house does have a basement with a little bit of a walkout space. It's not like a walkout to the full yard, it's a walkout to just a little narrow area. I'll show you. So I'll go through the plans a little bit. I'm starting at the top just because we've been kind of looking at and talking about the roofs. So this is that new roof in here that bridges over everything. Here's that existing part staying there. Here's the little bump out over the top of the garage. You know, they have bedrooms and bathroom upstairs. On the first floor, then, you can see this is all that space that they are claiming here. And sure enough, the steps to the garage are right in this location, so I'm sure that little bump out is just for a head clearance. And then they're adding the deck. And one of the things I talk about in the staff report is, you know, our guidelines for the deck require it set in 8 inches from the sidewall, and this currently is not. As you can see, it's flush with the sidewall. Oh, this is that area where there's a little basement door, and it steps out into just this small sliver of space behind the house. Here's that basement plan, in fact, and this shows you where that door is and stuff, too. So from the side, so this would be looking from the north side at that area. You can see all the work that's being demoed. Maybe this was a sliding doors or something, I'm not really sure. But here they'll be building that all out. And so we have a single full light door. We have pairs of windows. And at one point in time, I talked about the fact that, you know, if we go back to the very beginning, oops, and look at this house, we have individual windows. That's the window patterning here. On the side, you can see we have individual windows. When we get back here, we can see that there are some pairs of windows. Now, this house is a little bit later than some of the older houses we talk about, so it doesn't really have a weight pocket like we look at, but it does have some framing and trim between the two windows. So we would still want to see that kind of pattern. If we approve pairs of windows, the house does have some. I mean, this one will be removed, but there's one over here, and they have a piece of framing in between. So if we go back and look at that again, so we have pairs of windows, a full light door, the deck, the siding will match the shingle siding on the house, the roof will match. There's some foundation work that you can see here that they're showing as well. So from the south side, so this is the side where the property line is close, so you can see they're demoing kind of the crest of this roof. That's what that shows. And, you know, I don't know what happens up here. Maybe that's a drawing error, but this shows the new gable roof where it will be located, and then that little bump out over the garage again. These windows are existing. Otherwise, they would have to be changed again. That's all in that wall that's kind of non-contributing. And then this is also like a projecting one of those little greenhouse window things on the side of the house. So really the only other thing that I have to talk about here is the deck, and that's what this last slide is. You know, generally we're going to be matching the trim condition, we'll be matching the shingled siding. The recommendation includes information about the door and window product, just because we haven't really talked about it with this project and it hasn't been submitted. So, you know, the full light door, we'd again, like normal, suggest that it would be a wood or fiberglass door instead of steel, that the new windows are wood or metal clad wood per the guidelines matching the window configuration of the house. And the windows in the addition are either single or separated with wood trim if paired. And so that would be a condition for the commission to review. Assuming that you would want to approve pairs of windows, then we would want it framed separately like the other ones, so we have that space in between them. And then the last one is about the deck. So again, I mentioned that our guidelines call for a deck to be set in 8 inches from the sidewall, and part of that is to reduce the visibility of a deck. And on this house, you can see here where I'm standing, I think I'm in the car, so I'm in the street, I've zoomed in, and there's this like little panel here of trellis that you can see behind the house. Well, that would be located right here. So the deck is basically going to be in this general area right here. And so while setting it back 8 inches isn't going to make it invisible by any means, it would help reduce the visibility of the deck. And similarly, as our guidelines require, we would want to see that railing on that deck to be wood like normal and painted to match the house. Here it is. Right now, the deck railing appears to be in the right configuration. I can't tell if the bottom rail is raised up above the floor or not, but you know, we have newel posts, and we have a top rail, bottom rail, spindles in between, and staff would just recommend setting that in 8 inches. And I think that's probably my last slide, except for the motion. Yep, that's it.
Okay, so just a reminder of the order of events. We can ask any kind of clarifying questions, something you didn't understand. We'll see if the property owner, someone who represents the property owner, or the public want to speak. We'll get all that information, have a recommended motion, and then we can talk about it. So, any quick questions for Jessica?
Jessica, you said something wasn't submitted? What?
Oh, we don't have door and window product information on this project.
That's pretty common. I mean, we so often approve stuff and then subject to that later. I don't know if we have, the property owner, someone representing the property, are welcome to speak. You are not required to. If you do, just come up and sign in so that our minute taker can get your name. And
Good evening, Mike Nolan, Horizon Architecture. It's nice to see so many masks out here this evening. So I'm working with the property owners on this project. I think Jessica did a really nice job of kind of talking through what the intent is. More or less, we're trying to, obviously in the conservation district, doing the addition and looking at the standards. We did have a conversation about that exterior wall. It just is coming down to, if we were to take that out over on the, get my bearings here, is that the north side?
South side.
South side. It just, yeah, we're going to take advantage of the grandfathered stuff there and work around with it. I get a chance to look through the guideline or the recommendations. We have no issues, so the 8 inches is not a problem. We'll use a window similar to what we've used on other projects, so a metal clad, like a Quaker window with a divided light to match. And then the fiberglass wood door is not an issue either. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you guys have about the project, and we see no concerns with meeting staff recommendations.
great. Any questions for Mike? Any other members of the public want to speak? I think not. I feel like I know what they're here for, so that's why I'm assuming. All right, so let's get a motion on the floor, and then we can discuss.
Seligren, I move to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the project at 502 Clark Street as presented in the application with the following conditions. The full light door is wood or fiberglass. The new windows are wood or metal clad wood, matching the window configuration on the house. The windows in the addition are either single or separated with wood trim if paired, and the deck is revised to be set in 8 inches from the north wall of the original house. I think
DeGrasse,
that's it.
second.
Can you clarify the address that was for?
Yep, for 502 Clark Street.
All right, any conversation? All right, then we're ready for a vote. All in favor? say
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right, so this is item E. This is consideration of amendment to Title 14 zoning to clarify historic preservation related regulations. I think we've got a guest presenting this for us.
Yes.
That is correct. Kirk Lehman, Associate Planner for the city. And Jessica will bring up my presentation. So this zoning code amendment is a couple small changes. We were doing code cleanup throughout the code, and as we were preparing them, the chair requested that some of these be brought to the Historic Preservation Commission because they related to historic preservation. And so here we are, wanted to bring that to you. And so what we're looking for tonight is just a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission that would also get passed on to City Council. So this is prior to Planning and Zoning Commission review. So tonight we're looking at 4 pretty minor code cleanup items, and I'll just go through them one by one. And you can either ask questions during or at the end. It's probably easiest at the end since these are all pretty quick. So the first one is related to the historic preservation exception that's allowed within the zoning code. So this is some flexibility that's allowed for residential and commercial zones that allows flexibility from various dimensional standards, from some approval criteria, so things like setbacks. You can get waivers for height, you can get waivers for parking areas, for example, if that is proving a burden to occupying a property that's historic. And it also allows some additional uses that are not typically allowed within those residential and commercial zones. So to have that approved, the Board of Adjustment must find that the special exception meets all approval criteria. that includes one criteria for preserving historic, aesthetic, or cultural attributes of the property, and it also requires a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission. So the changes are specifically related to the language in how it's described as to what can use this exception. It currently says just local historic landmark. Staff has always interpreted that to mean both individually designated landmarks and properties in a historic district, but both of those are designated with a historic district overlay zone. And so this is just to clarify that, yes, it does include both of those, both the zone and the individual designation, and it just helps clarify language for those applying for or using the designation. So that's the first change. And it's what we're proposing is consistent to the way that we've interpreted it historically, like I've said. The second change is to remove the list of local landmarks, historic districts, and conservation districts from the zoning code. So currently within the zoning code, there are, every district is specifically delineated, both local historic districts and local conservation districts, as are individual landmarks. But we also keep track of those in a number of different ways in addition to the codified lists. So there's the codified list. There's also the official record, which is really the ordinances passed by council when they're rezoning the properties to either a historic district overlay or a conservation overlay or as an individual landmark. And then there's also staff administrative lists that we maintain that we use to track how these things work. Now, the reason we want to remove these lists from the zoning code is because for whatever reason, they don't often get updated at the same time that ordinances get passed. And so the administrative list is obviously the most responsive to what's happening in the community. Then you have the ordinances, which are kind of the official record, and these codified lists in the zoning code tend to be forgot. So we were initially going to come with an updated list and decided, we have other ways of tracking this that are probably more efficient, more effective. And so staff recommends removing these from the zoning code as separate lists. The third change is really simple. It's just adding OCD into the zoning code as the abbreviation that we use for conservation districts. We use it on our zoning code map, and it mirrors the way that the abbreviations are shown in historic districts as well. So the OHD designation, this just adds the OCD abbreviation into the zoning code. And then finally is clarifying some Historic Preservation Commission procedures. So there are two changes that we're really looking at. One is related to when a property is designated as a historic district or a conservation district, there's a mailing process and a public hearing. We've had some complaints about the mailing process, and so this is just trying to clarify that language so that especially applicants or those who may have some issues with the mailing, that it's clearly codified that this does not negatively, if we follow this process, it won't negatively impact our ability to designate property or to have subsequent hearings in the future. The second is that currently everything that comes before you also gets sent to the State Historic Preservation Office or the SHPO. But SHPO does not review all of the applications that we send. So there are some that are strictly local, and that would be conservation districts. It's local historic landmarks. And so we would only send those things that the SHPO cares about to SHPO so to reduce issues where you have to send it and then there's a waiting period. This way you just don't have to deal with that, and we only send the things to SHPO that need to go to SHPO. That being said, if there is something that you would like to send to SHPO, there's still always the flexibility to do that, but it is no longer codified that those items that they won't review will be sent to SHPO. So really these changes are to clarify processes, to try and make things a little more efficient. That was the goal of these two changes to the procedures.
Great. Sorry.
As far as correspondence, we did send all this to SHPO as well for comment. They didn't have any issues with it. So staff does recommend approval as illustrated in the attachment for this, which has this specific language that we are proposing.
Great. I have a couple of questions. I don't know if others do, but maybe I'll start. So I just wanted to clarify on there was 4 of them on the first one, which I think is about the Board of Adjustments. So it now is just, this can't be used for anything. I'm seeing OHD, right, which is the historic districts, but it would not be used for conservation districts.
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. And then it also is, which is, so the city governs the historic districts and local landmarks with that OHD zone. We don't, however, govern any of the stuff on the National Register, right? That is, there are properties that are on the National Register that aren't local historic districts or in a local landmark. So those are also, those would be subject to it. And then as I'm reading it here, if they wanted those exceptions or exemptions, I think, to the Board of Adjustments, we would still have to review that particular project because the way I read it is they have to have item A, the exception is necessary to preserve the historic, aesthetic, or cultural attributes of a property, and B, the applicant must obtain a certificate of appropriateness from us. So if, for example, the Englert or the Iowa State Bank, which I don't know these are the official names on the National Historic Register, but those are both 2 properties that are on the National Historic Register, not local landmarks. If they would come and ask for an exemption, we'd still have to approve that change. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I was reading it correctly as we're getting this opportunity to kind of dig into the code, you know?
Absolutely. That is correct.
Sorry, did you have?
Go ahead.
The other question was on the last item. I think the 14.8E1C, I think. This is just for new designations, right? This is not new zoning designations. Is that correct? If we would propose a new landmark or propose a new historic district,
That is correct.
it's only for zoning changes, not for any other changes.
Yeah, when you're doing a public hearing for those items, yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. Are you finished?
I have a couple more, but I think it's
Great,
good to
go
start.
ahead.
No. I think we should do it's more some process stuff but let's get the logistics done first.
As I read this over the first time and the second time, I didn't think it made anything clearer at all. I thought it really muddied the waters. And a couple of little things, just removing the titles of local historic districts and historic local landmarks, and they exist, but they're not going to be mentioned. I mean, just the OHD. Well, first of all, the general reader doesn't know what OHD means
I
and what's
agree.
included in it. And then there's another section, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't say, where I believe you said you're going to change the title of the conservation district. It'll still be a conservation district, but it won't appear on the map, but it'll be in the zoning code. Well, where do people start? Do they sit down and read the zoning code, or do they look a map to see what district they're in and what it's called? It just is all murky, I think. I think the user would be really flummoxed trying to figure out what he's looking at and what it's called and what he's supposed to do, and, this exception. And then it sounds also as though the Board of Adjustment can overrule the Historic Preservation Commission, can do anything it wants. I feel it's taking some of the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission and giving it to another commission which doesn't really have anything to do or any particular fondness for historic preservation.
So I can speak to some of those points at least. It sounds like removing the items from the zoning code, that's one of the issues you're talking about. If that's less clear, that's absolutely feel free to make a recommendation on that.
Well, I think the public needs to know that we have conservation districts and historic districts,
So-
and what the differences are. And
The-
this sweeps it all under the rug.
This doesn't strike all of those sections. It's very specific items within those sections that it's striking. So the zoning code will still describe what an OHD is, everything about it, but the difference is the list of individual properties, which is often inaccurate, would be stricken. Same with OCD, same with landmarks. So all of the only content that's being removed is content that is specifically listing individual properties, listing individual districts. I don't know if you can pull up the zoning code. I could show you if that helps.
I don't think I'm signed in here to be able to do anything on the web.
So,
Could you just go back to the 4, the four different, the list of four?
The
There was
list
like,
of
yeah, these
four.
four, this is what I wanted, right? So there's,
And with regard to the BOA as well, I just want to address
Yep,
this
that's fine,
before I
that's fine,
forget
that's fine,
about it, sorry. With regards to the BOA, this is an existing provision in the code. So it's, the only thing that it's changing is where specifically it applies, or the language used specifically, that instead of saying designated as an Iowa City landmark, it says located in a historic overlay. That's the
Just-
difference with that
can
one.
I think, Kirk, Kirk, I'm just going to ask some questions just to help us all understand, I think, like a glimpse into zoning, if I can. So you have, there's a couple different maps I think we're talking about. I think, Cecile, I think you're talking about the maps that we all refer to, which has the historic districts and the ones that's in our guidebook, that is on the website, all of those things. That map doesn't change in any way. And I think there's also a zoning map that exists that has, that thank you, yep, every historic district has a zoning overlay over it, which is how we actually have any ability to govern, right? It's actually a zoning thing. You can correct me if I'm wrong at any point. I'm just trying to kind of take your expertise language and try to talk in historic preservation language if I can. And so we have two different types of historic overlays. One is the historic, the OHD,
OHD.
which is historic districts and local landmarks, right? And then we have, the city uses OCD, but that's not in code anywhere. Because we created conservation districts and never really used we didn't create the zoning code for that. So the changes, as I understand them, there's the changes whether or not the list is listed or not in the thing. But to me, the naming, the nomenclature is like it seems very clean up to me. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of, because there's like the zoning map is just, there's like layers of it, of different things that you use.
So my own take on this, right, is that we received a couple of days ago a summary of what the changes would be essentially. It's not the code itself, right? It's a summary of the changes. And then here we're looking at a different view of that same summary of changes. And nowhere can we actually say, oh, this is what it looks like now, and this is what it's going to look like. And so for us lay people who aren't experts in it, it's just kind of confusing.
Sure.
And it might be that the final product is not confusing at all and makes perfect sense.
Well,
I think
in the attachment, it shows you the exact language that's in the code.
stand corrected.
And strikeouts or underlines as to things that are added or changed. So those are,
That's a few pages down. Thank you.
yeah, so the only changes are strikeouts and underlines within those sections. The exception being strike 14.3B1D. I did not list that whole, that's the list of local historic, that one would be historic districts and landmarks. And then 14.3B2D, which is the conservation district list. Both,
I look at that and I think I have to be a lawyer to know what you're talking about.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, none of us are actually looking at this, right? I mean, that's the thing. This is,
Is this for your use or is it for the public's use?
both.
I don't think the public's going to be.
well, the public,
The public typically doesn't deal with the zoning code unless you have to deal with the zoning code or you hire someone who knows how to deal with it. That's often what happens, or staff helps explain it to them and walks them through the process. A lot of what we have is people calling and say, hey, can I do this, can I do that? And we tell them, no, yes, no, maybe, and we try to help them as to what the process might be. So if you have a historic landmark and it's not in a historic district, you still might be able to get some flexibility that wouldn't otherwise be allowed to a house built yesterday, for example.
Kirk, I actually do have a question, just because I wasn't sure. With the striking of the list of the landmarks, which, yeah, it's not up to date by at least 26 of them right now, I think. But when you say striking the lists, there, as far as I know, there are no actual lists of the properties that are in districts in the code, but there are the maps. Is it the maps that we would be removing from the code?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Because my understanding is the maps are also inaccurate, and so you would rely on the ordinances that were passed and like the Historic Preservation Handbook that lists all those things.
Sure.
Doesn't change anything, just takes them out of the zoning code so that It's one less thing to update when we have other more official and accurate depictions of these things.
So in my mind, the list where in the past we listed most of the properties, but we were generally outdated, we are doing the equivalent of saying, see Appendix A, and this other list, which is a supposed Appendix A that is updated more frequently?
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay.
So
thanks.
reducing redundancy, but always making sure that people have resources they need
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah, and staff maintains those lists. We maintain the maps. That won't change. The difference is it just won't be individually listed in the zoning code. And there's even some
It
instances.
is listed in city code. I mean, right, every time they pass an ordinance to make a local
Yeah.
landmark, it's part of the city code.
Yeah.
That's their, or,
As part of the zoning map, yeah. And there are instances where properties that aren't actually a local historic landmark are listed in our landmark list that should not be listed. So there are a couple other issues that got involved as well that we would be cleaning up through this.
I can certainly understand the need to clean something up. I don't feel like I'm entirely qualified to make a vote on this. Just to find it confusing. I just feel a little ill-prepared. I think I'm not the only one.
yeah. Other questions?
Was it you said?
I didn't say anything.
Yeah, you did, when I said it muddied the
Oh,
waters.
I said I agree. Yep.
I have a few questions just related to process here.
Yep.
So, in the zoning code, as you referenced, one of them is our kind of our duties here, right? Outlines the Historic Preservation Commission. And one of the things that we do is shall weigh in essentially on behalf before other commissions and city stuff look at historic preservation stuff. This was not going to come to this commission, and I'm just curious about the thought process. Obviously, if you're doing cleaning up zoning code, a section of that same code says the historic preservation's job is to weigh in on these issues on behalf of preservation, and it wasn't a choice, it's shall. I mean, it's shall language, not may. And so I was really struck by it not coming to us and was interested in how that discussion happened and how that choice was made in the neighborhood and development services staff discussion.
Sure. So the discussion was, this was a zoning code issue with cleanup, and we honestly didn't see these as being substantive changes that would affect historic preservation in any way in Iowa City. So because most of them are based on ways that we currently implement the code. I mean, we already disregard the zoning code list that's in there because it's not accurate. We already use OCD as a designation. We already interpret the Board of Adjustment rules appropriately. And the procedures we were going to take to you as well as to SHPO, but that was the only change that we thought was somewhat substantive because it does change process for you. The first three, we didn't believe were substantive changes that would affect historic preservation.
So that's helpful. My follow-up is when I emailed the city staff and asked them to let us weigh in, they said that they would not until I sent a letter to the Planning and Zoning Chair and Commission, and they said they would pass it on. And by the time that meeting happened, I believe it was you that said the staff recommendation is that we defer. So I'm interested in what happened between that initial conversation when my request was denied and the meeting where it was decided to be honored.
Honestly, I don't know if I was part of that initial request. But, once we got the formal letter, it makes sense if the historic preservation wants to weigh in on something. Staff supports that as far as I know. So that's where the recommendation changed, where we took out the things related to.
So the difference was when I sent an email that asked staff directly to do it, it didn't. But when I sent a letter to the commission, it did.
I suppose.
Okay.
In the draft zoning code text, item 2, the Board of Adjustment may grant a special exception to allow a property located in an historic overlay registered on the historic places to be adapted, et cetera, et cetera. And then point A, the exception is necessary to preserve the historic, aesthetic, or cultural attributes of the property. It makes it sound as though the Board of Adjustment is in charge, determines what whether or not an exception is necessary to preserve the historic, aesthetic, or cultural attributes of the property, rather than the Historic Preservation Commission.
So I wasn't here when this provision was written, but my understanding is, sometimes you have non-historic properties in a historic district that is technically listed on the register and might be able to make use of it. My assumption is that's to make sure that only historic properties are actually utilizing these provisions. That's my assumption. I wasn't here when it was written, like I said.
I mean, Cecile, the only change, the changes are, this is the existing code as it is. Our job here is to say if the changes make sense or not. Not to weigh in on the actual code that is there.
You have color-coded,
Yeah, I just printed it in color. It's the same thing as that, but I'm happy to share it if that is helpful.
I can't do it on the fly like that. Okay, never mind.
Okay, what's our actual is it a motion? Do we move?
Yes, you should move and second and vote.
Okay,
To make a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
gotcha. I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time with these, and I am frustrated by the process, frankly. I've tried to make that clear, but I've spent some time looking at these and reading them and spending some time, and I think they are good intended cleanup language, and I think we should approve this. I can't make a motion, but I think it does our job. I'm disappointed that we weren't thought of, but that's kind of par for the course, I think.
So the motion that's needed, is it essentially what we're seeing here?
Yeah,
We
essentially.
move to approve the zoning.
Good, so Brown, I'll move that we approve the zoning code to be amended as illustrated in attachment 1 to address numerous code cleanup items relating to historic preservation.
Wagner, second.
I just want to remind folks, they do not have to vote yes. I'm going to, but not everyone does. So, any other discussion? All right.
The public have access to a list of landmarks that's easily obtained? Like, can they look it up online?
How do
They
we?
can call me and I can make one.
Or it's in the Historic Preservation Manual, I believe, which is available.
That's not
online.
current though either.
Yeah, it's off almost
Can
as much.
we amend this to say that we maintain on our website a list of Iowa City landmarks?
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that,
Is that can we just do that?
Yeah, Carl would have to amend it and his second would have to second it.
Yes, I amend it as
That
the chair has said.
city, you meant the city website includes a list of all local Iowa City landmarks.
Yes.
make available a list of current Iowa City landmarks.
Wagner, second.
All right. Thank you, Sherry.
I just have a question about that, because like the word landmark specifically, does that, in my interpretation of that is, do houses that contribute to a district, are they all landmarks?
No, all of that is zoned. No, the local landmarks are a special designation.
Okay.
And they are zoned OHD the same way as all of our historic districts are zoned OHD.
Okay.
So this language would allow, we have the maps readily available of the historic districts, and what we would do, since there's no list publicly anywhere that seems like that is current with local landmarks, that would be added. Maybe we could add it to the list of the maps, or figure out a way that it is available broadly
We
to the
make
public.
a list every year when we send out the mailing, and so we could just add that each year to the website. We could just update it.
But it would exist separately from the zoning map.
Yes, it would not be it would be on the city website and the historic preservation resources like the individual maps are.
And on the zoning map, each of these properties, the actual properties are zoned OH,
They have a little hatch that equals that.
overlay on whatever else they're zoned at. They could be zoned commercial or residential or
Okay.
whatever.
I understand.
All right, we got a motion, amended motion, plus a second on the floor. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. I would strongly encourage you guys to consider us more often.
We were considering you for that last one.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
just Those first three that we didn't think were.
Yeah, no, that's clear. Okay, thank you. All right. Report, this is item F, report on certificate issued by chair and staff.
Okay, certificates of no material effect in the Brown Street Historic District. We have this nice little ranch home, and it is getting a new concrete block foundation all the way around it. We had a few staff reviews. I've been working with the 228 South Summit Street apartment co-op for a while. All of the railings, there's 6 of them. Each side of the building has a set of railings, and they're all deteriorating in a way that is odd. It's wood, made with good wood, done like normal things, but the wood looks like it's melting. I mean, it's a dangerous situation. So they are getting them replaced. David Nasso is making them new railings out of Ipe, which is a good Brazilian hardwood, and we're actually helping them with the Historic Preservation Fund too, because in order for a group like that to get a grant, we just have to prove that 51% or more of the occupants meet our income guidelines, and they did that. Imagine how fun that was. But we got through it, and so they'll be getting a grant. It'll just pay for about 1/6 of the project, but it will help. 737 Grant Street. This is a cute little bungalow. I'm sorry, the intern forgot to put a front photo on here, so you don't know what it looks like. But it got an award last year. They are changing the stoop. There's some mobility issues. So what they will do is, okay, house, street, driveway. Here's the little porch you're looking at. They're adding a landing that's going to stick out a little bit, and then the stairs will be like 42 inches wide, extra wide, that go to the concrete. So the landing's basically going to stick out over the area where the existing stairs are so that it can come down here in this area. Simple project, really. 914 Dearborn Street. They're just replacing this with not turned spindles. I've talked to them about if they replace the whole thing, what we would do differently, but right now they're just replacing the railing. 918 Iowa Avenue. This, another stoop and step. This one, they thought they'd be rebuilding it to match, but it needs closed risers and the railing does not meet our guidelines, so they will be doing both of those differently.
Jessica, are they doing the railing on the east side of the house there too?
I don't know that,
Is there, if on the other side?
No.
Oh, they are.
Oh,
This is curious to me
mean,
because
do
the
we know that
tornado
they're doing
came
that?
through there.
yes.
They
And
called me to advise.
Now
and
they're
I just-
changing it or doing something different?
They just are, I think since it's a rental property, they might have been cited for something deteriorating and they have to build a new one. I only knew about one side of it, but as long as the other side also meets the guidelines. 625 South Governor Street. It's the second time this year where we've had somebody meet the conditions to have a staff approvable garage. There is no garage, and so that's one key thing. And they're building a little garage, and it meets all of the guidelines. Here's what it looks like. It was going to come before you, and at the moment I went to write the staff report, I saw that they had changed the 2-car door to 2 single-car doors, and then could approve it instead of bringing it here. So that was
What kind of siding are they using?
I can't remember. Does it say right there? Let's see.
Doesn't matter.
You know,
Fine.
everybody wants to use LP Smart Side lately,
Okay.
so it's probably LP. 727 Rundell Street. Since she bought the house, she's been doing a whole lot of work, and now she's getting solar panels. On not this slope, but the other slope. 431 North Van Buren Street. This was one of those many times when I went to review deteriorated windows. They're all repairable except for one. The bathroom window was the weirdest window I've ever seen. I still don't know really what that was. So it's being replaced, but all of the rest will be repaired. And she is actually getting some new storm doors with glass and stuff like that too. So we had just the one intermediate review. So the Highlander is a recent local landmark that we did during COVID. And the commission approved some work on the supper club and this front entry thing. And they're doing a big tax credit project, and they decided to roll in the replacement of the guest room windows, which was something that I was pushing for, because all of these existing windows, I mean, it's like the glass is plexiglass, and it's like the little dividers are, I don't know, made from one of those pens that melts it like a glue gun or something. It's really weird. And it has all of these crazy tiny little divided light pattern. The original windows were one pane of glass, another pane of glass, this is operable, so it's open, and another pane of glass. So we had just 3 panes of glass. Now we can't have an operable one anymore because it won't meet their code, but the new windows will again just be 3 panes of glass. So it'll go back to a nice, simple, mid-century kind of look. So that was a good thing to approve.
Code prevents hotels from having operable windows?
I don't know if it's the operableness that was against code, but they can't match the windows that were in there because those windows don't meet code, but I don't know what aspect of the window. It might not be the operableness, but it also might be. I don't know. And that was it we had for those.
All right, item G, consideration of minutes. Sorry, were there any questions about any of those that we didn't ask along the way? I'm sorry. All right, item G, consideration of minutes for the May 12th, 2022 meeting. Any amendments, changes?
Should I make a motion?
That'd be great.
DeGraw, I move to approve the minutes from May 12th, 2022.
Seligren, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, on to item H, commission discussion. Historic Preservation Awards.
Yeah, so we've been getting some nominations, and we had an intern who's been putting together a presentation. So if we stay on our current schedule, we would have a committee review the potential awardees sometime before the July meeting so that the commission could approve them at the July meeting. And so basically, I know that I have Kevin and Jordan.
I think I did not volunteer for
I can do it.
any. I'm swamped.
No problem.
I'm almost going to cry just thinking about it.
Yeah, I know. Me too. So, I mean, we will in July have new commissioners that can potentially help with the whole presentation thing, but I do need to have at least 3 commissioners on my awards picking committee.
If it's just picking them, I'll do it.
But
I think we had at least 2 because, sorry.
When are you meeting?
we will have to meet at a time when I am personally working. 9 to 2, Monday through Thursday. So that's also a stickler. If nobody can come, then maybe we can do an evening, but,
Okay,
can
put
do
me
it.
down. I'll do it.
I can, but I'm no longer on the commission, so.
well, you could help until the end of June.
You're technically, I think this is your last meeting, but I think
So
you're.
you could like help pick awards and then say, hey, deal with them yourself.
Okay.
So I would have Kevin and Cecile and Sherry.
And Frank.
And Frank. That would be good. So I'm going to try to set up a meeting for us all, and I don't know when that will be, now that I think about it, because I am off the week before the meeting, just so you know. So I'll be publishing, I will get the agenda for the next meeting ready a week ahead of time, actually. And then it'll just sit up there until the day I normally publish, and then other people will publish it. So I think I'm looking at, that before the end of June, so we can get these 2 in. And, I don't know, just, you'll want to,
Maybe we could, after the meeting adjourns, we could just, the 4 of
Discuss
us,
real
just get our
quick.
calendars out and maybe pick a time. I think Margaret also offered to be on that commission.
maybe that was.
So let's get our schedules and then just set it, and then hopefully Margaret can join, and if not, we can figure out how to best include her.
Yeah. That works well.
I know for a fact that I won't be at the July meeting. Will that be a major problem?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
As long as Kevin is here, we don't need you to run the meeting, and then it just, we have to
I'll
get
be
a
here.
quorum, that's all.
I'm leaving the next day, but I'll be here.
Really?
I scheduled my trip so I could be here.
Dedication.
Okay, so I think that's all. I mean, I just wanted to update you, make sure I knew who a committee might be for choosing those. So that was it for the awards.
Okay, well, let's just, the four of us just kind of huddle up real quick after we adjourn and find a time.
So we had one other thing in Commissioner discussion.
Yeah, no, I know. I was getting to that. Jessica. Well, we have two commissioners leaving us tonight. This is their last meetings. Sherry and Cecile, both, I prepared some notes, so I'm not. Both were commissioners when I joined, which feels like forever ago. And, you know, I think I remember really thinking about, both of you were very, I think, vocal in some of my first meetings and asked really good questions and kind of helped me kind of guide my early time on the commission. I will miss having more senior commissioners at this meeting, that is for sure, because that is just the two of you. And then individually, this is, you know, my second time my path has crossed with Cecile. I first knew her as, I'm going to get this wrong, but Madame Kunzli. She was my French teacher in about 1996. And, you know, so this is one of the things I love about life is, like, you know, times when you get to spend time with people in different phases of their lives and see them in different aspects. And I've really enjoyed that opportunity. And I really always, Cecile, admire your direct questioning. You're reminding us to remain steadfast to our standards and guidelines. And always reminding us that even though we don't set precedent in our decisions, that future commissioners may look back at the choices we make. So I will carry those thoughts with me. Even though you won't be here at future meetings, those thoughts will remain with me at least for the next 12 months. I mean, probably beyond that, but I'm only on the 21st for the year. And Sherry, I will really miss carpooling with you occasionally in some of those winter meetings or walking back when it's nice. I feel like we had some great meeting after meetings where we plotted plotted a lot. I'll miss Sherry's eye for design. Particularly anything with typography, and I just always enjoyed that. And I know I will get to see a lot of her because of our shared commitment to our neighborhood and preservation. I know she's not going anywhere. But I also want to remind you that both of these folks were folks that have been involved in every award ceremony that I've been involved in. So that means the rest of us have some work to do to pick up the slack from these two departing us. But I really just wanted to say thank you very much, and we'll miss you guys very much at the meetings and appreciate the thoughtfulness and preparedness that you come to each meeting with, and thank you for your service here on the commission.
Sellergren seconded.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you for also sitting us both on one side so I could like look at them.
Yeah, I want to say one thing. It's been a lot of fun finding out what is going on in the city and working with the people on the commission. It's always an interesting group. And I want to add, since Kevin mentioned it, back in '96 when he was in my classroom, I said to myself, someday that kid's going to be in city government. Yeah, only I didn't know I'd be there with him.
You could tell all
Yeah.
back then.
So thank you for putting up with me.
I also want to say, I almost put up a picture because when we had that, the annual summit was in Des Moines with the national conference at the same time, and we had to take a photo of the commission. That was in 2018, and I almost put that photo up here because there are 4 people in this room who are in that photo, and everybody else changed. But you were new, you two were in the commission, and so was Frank, and Frank left and came back.
I
But
didn't leave, I got kicked off.
I know, you did. But, you know, I just want to say that I really appreciate you both have been, you know, you participate, you've been great helpers. I couldn't have done the awards without either of you the last few years, and I will really miss you too. Thank you for serving.
It's been really nice and informative, and if you ever need typography and things like that, just let me know. Or graphics.
Yeah.
We also have one of our new commissioners who's joining us next month in the audience tonight. We'll let you introduce yourself next month, but wanted to put a name or to a face so people knew why she was here tonight.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And we have replacements for both of you, so that's
Great.
Great. Yep.
I also can I take a moment of chair privilege at the end here? I just also wanted to say too that, you know, June is Pride Month. I've got my Pride shirt on, and, you know, I grew up loving local history and really reading the Irving Weber books and the articles in the Press Citizen even before I was, when I was very young. And I knew at a very early age that I was gay, but I didn't ever see myself really reflected in that history. I remember rereading the line, the only two unmarried mayors were Emma Harvett and Bachelor Mayor Harry Breen. Like rereading it, being like, is Irving trying to send me a clue here, right? Were these guys gay? And so I think it's just, to me, a reminder that the work of preserving our shared history really, it needs to be inclusive, and not just because it's not just for LGBT folks, but for all. I mean, I have kind of mixed feelings about the city's celebration of Pride, because it feels a little corporate and sanitized, considering the first Pride was really a act of overthrowing oppression. But and Iowa City was no different, right? I mean, there were the Iowa City Police was very much involved in a raid at a gay pride, a gay dance. There were more law enforcement officers coming to raid the event than there were.
UAY, right?
It was in a basement of the church that's right.
US,
Yes, yeah. More law enforcement officers there, and all of those names, of course, were printed in the paper. So I just, and they were very regularly setting up stings to arrest men having sex with men in public places, or public places at night. One Iowa City leader who was arrested committed suicide before his name could be in the paper the next day. And of course, the Iowa City Police, which they just did a week ago, pinned blame on the person who they arrested. And but I don't want to just think about that, but I also want to think about great people too that we can celebrate. I think of Iowa City and Rick Graff, who is honored by the Human Rights Commission Award named after him. He was a leader in Iowa City in the Gay Liberation Front who put on these dances, who staffed phone lines for people. They put ads in the paper for people who were questioning their sexuality or worried about people committing suicide. And eventually, he got married to his partner and ran for city council in a very challenging, literally the goodest of good old boys. He did not win, but I was a young person at that time wanting to be involved in city government, but not seeing very many people who looked like me doing it. And I just, am happy. I was happy to be able to see someone who, even though they were unsuccessful, was an out man, not just the bachelor mayor. So I'm also reminded, that we have come real far, but we have a ways to go to build a just city, not just for LGBT folks, but for all these marginalized communities, and the city staff in particular. The leadership has a long way to go to fix some of the problems that they have. And I have been really disturbed this last week by the lack of leadership of our city and how they're handling some of the issues around policing. But anyway, it's Pride, and I wanted I always like to share a little history when we have kind of a shorter meeting. And there's some good parts of that history and not so good parts, but just wanted to do that. And so the first draft of this was much tougher. I named people's names that I didn't end up doing now. But thank you for giving me that opportunity to share a little bit before we adjourn tonight.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah. With that, I think we're ready to adjourn. Do we have a motion?
Kernsley moves that we adjourn this meeting.
Would you like to second, Sherry?
DeGraw, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.